Hello beautiful friends, I am here today with the first video in what will become a series for my YouTube channel. It's something that I have talked about in some previous videos that I was intending on doing, and I think now is a good time to start. So welcome to my series of scrapbooking tips, tricks and tutorials. I am going to start today with a little tutorial. So I recently uploaded my walkthrough of my completed 2019 December daily album, and when I did that I lost a little bit of footage where I was talking about this insert that I made for my album, which was the number 25. It was a full page insert and it was back to front. Now some people have, or some of you lovely viewers have expressed an interest in seeing more about how I actually created this insert. So I thought this was a good place for me to start with my little tutorial series, or tips, tricks and tutorial series. Now I am going to be showing you how to create an insert like this for a 6x8 album, and I will specifically show you how to make this number 25 insert. But this will also apply to create any kind of insert really with any kind of file. It could be for a 6x8 album, it could be for a smaller format album, it could even be for a larger format album, because the process is going to be essentially the same. So let's hop on over to my computer and walk through how to create your own album, custom album insert. Here we are in my Silhouette Studio software. Now I do have the designer edition, so this may look a little bit different to yours if you have a different edition. When I created my number 25 insert, I actually used a digital number which came from Ali Edwards. It was a download that I purchased from her store. But today I'm actually going to show you how you can create that number yourself just using the text tool in Silhouette. So the first thing I'm going to do is come over to my panel on the left here and select the text tool. For the purposes of this demonstration, I am going to choose a font that I know will be nice and bold, and I'm going to come all the way down here to Rockwell Extra Bold. I'm going to resize my font for this to 288 and then just click somewhere in here and type my number 2. Then I'm going to click out of that and pick my type tool over here on the left again. Again, making sure I've got my font selected up the top. This one I'm going to make slightly bigger, so I'm going to make it at size 300. Clicking here on my workspace and typing in my number 5. So now I have my two numbers. I'm just going to bring them over to the center a little bit here. And I want to bring my number 5 next to the 2 so it's just slightly overlapping and just sitting slightly above that number 2. So you can see if I zoom in here, you can see that I have a little bit of an overlap right here. Now I need to actually weld these two numbers together, because at the moment if I send it to cut, each of those little red lines there will cut separately. So I want it to just be one whole piece. To do that, I'm just going to left click with my mouse and drag across so that I select both of those numbers. I'm going to come over here to my panel on the right hand side and click this little piece here, which is called the modify panel, and I'm going to select up the top weld. And what you can see that's done there is it has made it one whole piece, and it's just removed those cut lines that were in the center between the 2 and the 5. So I want to make sure that I've got the sizing of this correct. I wanted to have that number 25 so it takes up just about the whole width of the page. So I'm going to left click and just drag the corner out to make this about 5.8 inches wide, which makes it about 3.8 inches high. And there we have my first piece. So this is the piece that you will see in the center, and in mine it was cut from some matte gold foil. But as I said, when I cut mine, I wanted to make sure that when I flipped the page, it looked good from both the front and the back. And to do that, it means I need to cut each piece out twice. So I need to cut it once with the correct orientation, and then once with a flipped or a mirror image. To do that, I'm going to select my number, right click and copy, come down here, right click again, and then paste. So I now have duplicated that number 25. Of course, if you want to take a little shortcut, you can also use your Control C for copy and Control V for paste. But now I need to actually make this into a flipped mirror image. So to do that, again, I'm selecting that piece. I'm going to right click and I'm going to flip it horizontally. And that's it. So now I have my first two number 25s, and they will be ready to send off to cut on my silhouette. But of course, what you saw with mine was that I had layered my pieces up a little bit. So I had my first number 25, I had a really fine white border around it, and then I had layered the whole piece onto the foundation, which is the part that pops into the album. So to create that first little mat, I'm going to select my number 25, come up here to this little star shape, which is an offset panel, and I'm going to click this button here that says offset. I'm going to reduce this offset down a little bit to, I think, let's see, 0.1 I think should be good, because I don't want to have quite that much. Now you have the option of either keeping a nice squared off corner like this, or a rounded corner. It really comes down to personal preference. For this one, I'm going to keep my corner squared off so that it matches the actual number. And now I have my two pieces. So inside I had that original number 25, which I'm going to cut from one type of paper. And now I have my little mat, my border, which is the second layer. And of course, once again, I need to create a duplicate of that. So I've just done my Control C and my Control V. And then I'm going to select this duplicate number, right click, and flip it horizontally once again. So that's those two pieces, and I'm just going to move those off to the side here while I work on creating the last piece of this puzzle. Okay, so the last piece is going to be the foundation. It's the piece that all of my layered number 25s sit on, and it's also the piece that has that little panel down the side there to punch holes in to insert it into the album. So the first thing I need to do is create another offset from my original number 25, and to do that, once again, I'm going to click on the number 25, come over here to select to the right hand side to select my offset panel. And I'm going to hit the offset button again, but this time I want the offset to be wider. So I want there to be a bigger base. So I'm going to adjust this here to, let's start with 0.2 and see how that looks. I think that looks pretty good. I'm pretty happy with that. And once again, I'm going to choose the sharp corners for that. And you know what? I think I can make it a little bit slightly bigger, 0.225. Yeah, I'm happy with that. Just that little bit bigger, and then hit apply. I'll move my original number 25 over to here. Okay, so here is my base piece, but of course I need to have my little insert my little piece down the side here to punch holes in. Now to do that, I'm going to come back over to my tools on the left hand side, and I'm going to select this rectangle tool. Now I know that I want my piece to be about 1 inch wide, and I'd say probably about 5.5 inches tall, or 5 inches tall. So I'm just going to use the grid on my workspace as a guide to go 1 inch across and 5 inches down. And the way that I figured that out is I took a page protector and I measured the width of the piece, the panel down the side that has the holes punched in it. And I also measured the distance between the binder rings inside to make sure that I was going to be sitting, to measure the distance. So in mine it sits across 4 different rings and it misses the top ring and the bottom ring. So I measured the distance there between those points to get my 5 inches. Hopefully that makes sense as I'm explaining it. Then what I'm going to do is I'm going to bring this piece over, and just as I did when I created my number 25, I'm going to just slightly overlap it onto that number 2 there. And that's just so that it's got a good solid grip on that number. But once again, when I zoom in, you can see here that with them overlapping, if I was to send this to my silhouette now, it would cut these inside lines, which I don't want it to do. So I will left click and drag across to select both of those pieces. Come over here to my tools panel on the left, select that modify panel again, and then weld the 2 pieces together. Now I have my number 25. I've got my piece here to punch. Of course, I need to once again duplicate that and flip it so that I have the back piece. And that's pretty much it. So once you've done all of that, you will send it all over to your Silhouette Studio software, to your Silhouette Cameo or whatever cutter it is that you have, and cut each of those pieces out and then layer them up with some adhesive. And just to give you a visual here in the software of how that will look, here is my base, which has got the punched piece there. Here is my center, number 25, if I layer that in the middle there. Here is my matted, number 25. I know it's a little bit abstract, but when we pop back over to the number in just a minute, you'll see. And so that's how those layered pieces look in the Silhouette Studio software. But let's pop back over to live now so that I can bring that to life with something a little bit more physical for you. Okay, so I wanted to just quickly pop back on live here just to give you more of a visual of how all of those really abstract pieces that I went through in my Silhouette Studio software look once they've been cut out. So that first number 25 that we cut would be this little piece here, which is my matte gold foil. Then if I get a little bit closer, you can see that I have just a really fine white border around that. And of course, here is that red stripe is that backing piece with the pop-in insert here. Now, when I did this, I actually trimmed down the edge because I did have both sides rounded. And I trimmed down the edge there just to give me a straight edge on that side. And the way that I figured out where to punch the holes is I took just a regular page protector that came out of the album and I layered it over the top like this, making sure that my piece was nice and centered. I just used a pencil to make a couple of dots where the holes were, and then used a punch to punch those holes out. And then when we did that horizontal flip, what that did was it gave us these pieces on the back so that when we turn the page, it's nicely finished on front and back. So that's how to create that number 25 pop-in, but let's just hop back over to the Silhouette Studio software and we'll use those same ideas to create an insert using a regular cut file. And then to finish off, I thought I would give you just a really quick demonstration of how this technique can actually be used to create an insert for just about any file that you have that you can work with in your Silhouette software. So what I have in front of me here is the December stack cut file from Cut to You, and I'll add a link to that below in case you're wanting to grab this file for yourself. This is a JPEG. So the first thing that I need to do when I'm working with this is I need to come on and trace it. Just going to select the trace area here. and trace that piece. Now I'm going to move my original over to the side, and just a little tip from me, whenever I am working with cut files, I do like to keep the original piece, and in this case it's that JPEG. I do like to keep it on my workspace until I'm completely finished with my project. That way, if I need to do any more manipulating, or if I need if anything that I do with the cut file goes wrong, I've still got that original there that's sized correctly. So I do like to keep that off to the side. That's just my little tip for you. So what I would do here is I would send this straight off to my silhouette, probably onto some white cardstock or maybe some colored cardstock. And that is going to be just your regular cut file with all of these little spaces here to fill in with some patterned paper. Now, of course, if I want to make it look the same from the front and the back, I'm going to Control C, Control V, so copy and paste to create my duplicate, right click and flip it horizontally, and then cut that as well so that I've got those two pieces that will sit back to back. But we want to make this into a whole page insert. So the first thing, you could just insert this as it is by drawing your rectangle down here and having it meet up with those D's before you send it off. So I'll just quickly show you how that would look. I'm just going to eyeball it here, make it about 1 inch wide, and then, I always do that. Come back over here to my select tool, and I just want to make sure that it is just touching those D's, the top, the middle and the bottom D. And then of course dragging to select both of those and welding them together. And that is how I would then send that off to my Silhouette Cameo to cut. And I would back each of those little letters with some pretty patterned paper, flip it, cut it again, and then adhere the two sides together. So that's one way that you could do it. Another way, if I just Control Z to undo all of those bits, and I'll move this rectangle over to the side because we'll use it again, is I can also create a base for the whole piece to sit on. And just as when I was working with the number 25, to do that I'm going to need to create an offset to add a border around the outside. But if I select this as it is and add in my offset, what you'll see is that it's going to add a lot of extra cut lines inside that cut file, because when you create the offset, it is offsetting every cut. Of course, we don't want that. We just want the border. So the easiest way that I know to achieve that is I'm going to create a duplicate of this once more, and I'm going to move my original over here so that I've got that intact, ready to cut without worrying about messing with it. Then what I want to do is I want to actually break this down from being one combined cut file into lots of little pieces. So I'm going to select it, right click, and release the compound path. And what that has done is, rather than treating it just as one whole cut or one whole file that needs to be cut, each little piece is now its own separate cut, which can be manipulated. And what that allows me to do is just select that outside piece, so just that line that you see right on the outside of all of the words. And if I come up and hit offset on that now and bump that up to about 0.15, I think, maybe a little bit bigger, 0.2. There we go. So you can see now it has just added the offset to the outside piece, which is exactly what I want. And now I can go ahead and get rid of all of that. So I've just selected it all, deleted. So now here is our border, and if I bring my original file back in, you can see how that sits in there. And here is our pop-in piece, or our piece that's going to allow us to punch the holes. So I'm going to bring that in nice and close, overlap it there. And I think what I might even do, just to make sure that it's going to sit properly in the album, is I might select both of those pieces and use the alignment tool here to make sure that they are aligned in the middle. And that's that little tool up the top here, very, very handy. I'm then going to select both of my pieces again, open the modify panel, weld them together, and now I have, and do you know what I've seen down here? I didn't overlap them quite enough. If I zoom in here, you can see that I didn't overlap that rectangle far enough. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to go and Control Z to undo until I get to the point, there we go, where I welded them together. And I'm going to bring this over just a little bit more, select them again, weld, and that's looking better down there. So that will be my foundation piece. I'll be able to punch my holes in here, layer my back to cut file over the top, and so that will be my front piece. And then of course I will create a duplicate of this, which I will flip horizontally and cut that out, and then layer my back piece over the top. So I hope that has been clear enough for you. This is the first time that I have recorded a tutorial, so it is something that's very new to me, and it has been a bit of a steep learning curve getting around some technical issues. Of course, I would love to hear any feedback that you have to offer on how I went explaining things, if you needed more detail, if I needed to go a little bit slower. I'm open to all feedback. This is something that's very new, and I hope that it has been helpful, and I hope that it has been informative. Now, as I go on with this series, if there is anything that you would like to see me film tutorials, provide tips, share some of my tricks with you, again, please leave me a comment and let me know, because I am creating my own little list of things that I'm going to be filming and be including in this series. But of course, I would love to do something that helps you. So that is it. As always, thank you so much for watching, and I hope you have a great day.